The Biped device is a harness that sits on your shoulders, and the value proposition of the device is to be an all-in-one mobility solution. Our software that understands the surroundings, we quickly got it to a level where we could actually understand where obstacles were. Are they moving? Is there a risk of collision based on the trajectory, etc., etc.? So we were able to have the feedback of both professional orientation and mobility trainers, and on the other hand, of a lot of end users.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the studio today. I'm Simon Bonenfant, and today we're going to be talking about a topic that is on everyone's mind as blind and visually impaired people, and that is navigation. We're going to talk about a smarter way to navigate a new device that's emerging, and we're going to talk about an opportunity that you can try out the device for yourself. We're talking about the Biped, and we're speaking with Maël, Fabien. Maël, it's great to be with you today.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. Good to have you also on the episode. I'm very happy to be there.
Great. And what is your title at Biped AI?
I'm the co-founder. I took the role of CEO, whatever CEO means when you're six, but someone had to take that role.
Very good. Okay, why don't you start by telling listeners, what is the Biped device?
Yeah, the Biped device is a harness that sits on your shoulders, and the value proposition of the device is to be an all-in-one mobility solution. So the device has cameras on the left side of your chest, a small computer on the right side of your chest, and a battery behind the neck. And basically, it can detect obstacles, it can give GPS instructions, and it can provide scene description using AI. So we really wanted to combine kind of the three major trends that we saw in mobility, but just integrate them very well in a single device for orientation and mobility purposes.
Great. So what is the mechanisms that users are alerted of feedback, and what is the ultimate goal of how they're supposed to interpret that feedback for themselves when they're out in a navigational setting?
It's fairly simple and easy to learn. For obstacles, it's basically sequences of beeps that are played in bone conduction headphones. Works with any headphones, but you could use Open Run from Shocks. You could use AirPods in transparency mode, even though they do block the ear canal. So these are not the ones I would recommend, or Bose frames, or whichever headphones. And as an obstacle is coming closer, you just start hearing a sequence of beep coming closer. So really like beep, 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 beep. The sound itself, we worked with a company that is specialized in game design and game audio design specifically. And so the sounds have a 3D effect. So you can hear them coming from the left or from the right. And that's one of the reasons why the cameras we embed have such a wide field of view. So it's nearly flat field of view in front of the user, so 170 degrees of field of view. And so if an obstacle is coming from the left, you basically hear the sound coming from the left. Or if an obstacle is coming from a head level, so like a low-hanging branch or a traffic sign, you would hear it with a high pitch coming from like make it feel like it's coming from the head level. So that's fairly intuitive to understand. And then of course for the GPS and the scene description, that's just provided, like the feedback is just provided as a sequence of just words that are being played. So that's very intuitive, like in 20 meters, turn right, this kind of instructions.
Oh, very good. So the headset would connect through Bluetooth, whichever headset people would like to use. Is that how that works?
Yes, absolutely.
How heavy is the device, or how big is it when you would actually use it or have it around you in a navigational setting?
So the device is about 1 kilogram. So that would be slightly more than 2 pounds. When it sits on the shoulder, it's actually like the number one feedback we get is, I thought it would be a lot heavier. So it's usually fairly light to wear on your shoulders. It can sit on top of a backpack or on top of a jacket. So you just wear that as the very last layer. The device is entirely black so that, you know, when someone's quite far, you can't really see that you wear something on your shoulders. The cameras themselves are covered by some kind of tinted glass, so you can't really like see through the cameras. Don't know, like you guess there are some kind of sensors behind there, but you can't really tell it's cameras. That's we added that for a data privacy standpoint. And in terms of volume, each side, so the small part that you have on the left side of your chest, that's going to be the cameras, they're kind of like maybe 2.5 inches away from your chest. So we created like a module that has a certain thickness so that it actually doesn't pick up your coat or a scarf or things like this. So the cameras are a tiny bit further apart from your chest directly. The computer on the right side of your chest is flat, so it's less than 1 inch thick. And in terms of volume, they're, I would say, equivalent to previous generations of iPhones, like iPhone 4, or if you probably have that in mind in terms of sizes. So you'd have like these kind of modules that are about this sizes on its side, and the battery behind the neck, and the battery is just like a square of maybe, I don't have the conversions in mind too good, but that would be around 2.5 inches, probably just a square battery. And the whole device is black. And to push the description a bit further, you have straps also that goes on your shoulders. So these parts are actually flexible. They're rubber with a metal structure inside, so you can bend them to match the shape of your chest.
Oh, very good. Now, you mentioned there's several modes that you can use with this device, one being the obstacle detection, but you also mentioned a GPS mode. How do these settings get changed? And I assume you can customize the device to work in a certain way a little bit. How would you go about customizing the options and going through the settings of the device?
Yeah. For the obstacle avoidance, you can actually, like, we thought about several interactions. The easiest is we have a button on the right side of your chest. You click on it, it puts the whole device on pause. So that's like a quick and easy way when you get in a coffee or whatever to just put the device on pause and not have to like be triggered by too many sounds. If you want to change settings, you can directly download the smartphone application named Biped app. It connects to your device. You can change distances at which you want to detect obstacles, although we're working on estimating from the camera feed how fast you're walking. So that setting might even get removed in the next couple of months. And then if you want to define like the GPS destination, that's same on the smartphone app. You can save favorite destinations, click on the one you want to head to. It will compute the route to go there. And then you start hearing turn-by-turn instructions directly from there. By default, the instructions will play an angle by telling you, for example, to turn right at 3 o'clock. So that you have an idea of how sharp the kind of turns you need to make is. And if you work with orientation and mobility trainers, there is also a deeper setting menu that is available. So inside of the smartphone app, there is a companion mode developed for orientation and mobility trainers that gives them access to a couple more settings that are usually to be defined once during a mobility training process and then can stay fixed. So in terms of customization, that's pretty much it. Most of the settings to adapt to how the user behaves automatically. You can turn on and off the detection of holes, for example, in the ground. So that's one thing we also end users access to. And of course, if you don't type a GPS destination, you don't have any instruction at this level. And the final interaction that you get, and that's something we launched at CSUN actually, is when you double click on the button on the right side of your chest. It's kind of the AI feature. It takes a picture of your surroundings and then gives you a couple of seconds later a speech description of your surroundings. And that one can just be customized with one setting that we'll also introduce at CSUN. So that's for all the novelties and exclusivities. But we have like a trekking mode. So if you're walking on, I don't know, like in the forest or whatever, you might need specific types of descriptions of the things that are around you that are not the same as you'd use for orientation and mobility training purposes in city centers. And so you can basically just double click the button. And if you have inside of the smartphone this tracking mode that is enabled, then it will focus more on describing the landscapes around where the path is going and something that is a bit more exhaustive in the scene description.
So this is where it would take a picture of your scene when you're stopped, and then you would receive information about what's around you in that scene?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's very good. I think it's great that you're adding the capability of using this camera for that very practical purpose of just getting descriptions, especially because the cameras are positioned so well. That's one of my complaints, I feel like, with the apps on the phone with the camera is that if you're not in the right frame, you're not going to get anything. And, you know, for someone that's totally blind, it can be sometimes difficult to know how to use a camera in that way. But, you know, with this, it's just kind of very intuitive, and you have that information right there with just the way the cameras are mounted. So it's a very nice use case you have there.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a quick anecdote, one of the fun things that we tried recently was during a test session with a user, you know, getting close to a building, but the building, like the GPS information was quite sparse. It was not precise enough to really find the entrance of the building because of the GPS coverage in that area. and the entrance was actually completely on the left. And so one of the things that we did was in the end be able to like double click on that button. That button would take a picture, and then the scene description was highlighting that the entrance of the building was on the left and that the building was named as such. So it even picked up where we based the local campus named Biopole. So it was saying you have the Biopole building that is located on your left about 7 meters, so be around 20 feet away on your left. And that's the kind of use cases where having so many cameras, like 3 cameras with this, we gather basically 3 cameras in a single camera module, but having 3 cameras that have such a wide field of view is actually quite interesting.
Right, so you can use the GPS mode and the scene description mode in tandem to get the information that you're looking for. Now, how about if you're in the GPS mode, can you also get the obstacle detection as well?
Yeah, so the sounds overlay, it's like really we made all the integrations so that they really fit in all together. So if you have the scene description, it would put on pause the rest of the pipelines. But then if you get the GPS mode, it would overlay with the obstacle sounds. And so whenever you have a GPS instruction that's being played, if there is something that is more important, for example, an incoming obstacle, then it will tone down the GPS instruction and you'd mostly hear the incoming obstacle.
So with this obstacle detection mode, is there a way that you can actually identify what the obstacle is? Maybe if that obstacle would be something that you're actually looking for or something that may help you in your environment? Or is it just saying that something's there, but you don't know what's there?
It's a mix, I would say, for now. Our algorithms classify what type of obstacle it is. So we can know if it's a pedestrian, if it's a bicycle, or if it's a car, for example. But for generic obstacles like branches or whatever, that's, I think, is going to remain just a beep in the interpretation. The sound also reflects the volume of the obstacle. That's something we did by default. So if the sound is a bit more dull, it means that the obstacle is quite narrow, quite thin. And if it's a kind of a big sound with a bit of reverb, then it basically means that the obstacle spans quite massively. That usually, by experience, is enough in the vast majority of cases, and combined with the AI button provides like this kind of a understanding upon request, like you get the deeper description, and then on the rest of your mobility journey, you just focus on a single sound that you can really work with. And our commitment is to have as little sounds as possible in a journey, because we only trigger these sounds whenever there's a real risk of collision based on the trajectory. But that being said, I don't know how things will evolve based on also customer requests. If we see that it's something that is really where we get lots of requests for this, we could definitely have specific sounds for specific types of obstacles, because that's an information that is in there, and it would just take a couple of days to build on our side.
Right. And I guess now you could potentially use all these modes. If you were looking for a building per se, you would hear a different type of sound than maybe a car, and then you could maybe take a picture of the scene and it might tell you that there's a building on your left or on your right or something like that.
Yes, absolutely. So for walls, for example, and very big elements, the sounds are even distorted like a bit more. It feels like almost like a vibration. So it's really a sound that is meant to be non-intrusive so that you can actually follow a wall and know that the wall is on your right, or that the building is on your right. The sound wouldn't stop. But then by the time you get to, for example, your destination, you still have that sound on your left or on your right. And then you just double click on the AI button, and then you get a scene description, identifies the doors, the number of the building, the GPS tells you that you have arrived at your destination. And making, these 3 elements work together is really how we thought one could go around trying to solve mobility in the full spectrum of starting from the closest obstacle to actually like discovering new places and whatever the challenges in between might be.
What's the onboarding process like? You mentioned all these different sounds and the different modes. Is there a manual or something that folks can read once they buy the device so that they're familiar with what all the tones mean and how they can use them to their best ability?
We do have an online onboarding process where it's like a step-by-step introduction to really go from unboxing the device to being quite an advanced user, with explanatory videos and a lot of text that walks through all the features. If you want to have a quick start also inside of the smartphone app, there's a couple of info that is interesting where you can get training levels. So it's like an immersive audio experience where we just describe situations and then how the device would react in those situations, and then ask a couple of questions. So that's the kind of first mandatory training that one needs to do. And then if you want to dive deeper, that's usually on the training platform on our website. Yeah, and we do also work with a couple of distributors for now in Europe, but we are also hoping to meet a couple of interesting distributors at CSUN to provide one-to-one onboarding. And at the end of the onboarding, the digital onboarding, what we usually do is just we leave a link for a one-to-one conversation with potential customers so that if they have any further question in their journey of like learning to use Biped, they can always reach out to our team.
And what's the battery life like for the device?
Usually lasts a day of use. So that's 3 hours of continuous walk time. That by experience lasts, around a full day of use for like a normal use, I'd say. You can always swap the battery. So we deliver 2 batteries. So you can take the device out of your shoulders, slide the battery out of the back part of the device, and then slide in a new battery.
So if I was walking to my destination with this, maybe for 20 or 30 minutes, and then I got to my destination, would I press that button to pause the operation, and would it save the battery until I needed it again? Is that how that works?
Yes, absolutely. So the device then, after a couple of minutes, would go in deep sleep and then last a couple of extra hours that way. So you can like grab your coffee or have your meeting and then just click the button again and the device wakes up and you're good to go. And then if you want to save the battery all the way, you can either maintain a long press on the button that will turn it off or completely just pull the battery out of the device and put it on charge somewhere.
Okay, so it even detects when it's not being used for a time and then it shuts off automatically?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how does charging the device work? What kind of outlet, and does it come with a charger?
So it comes with a charger. We have a specific magnetic charger that basically it replicates how you slide the battery inside of the back case of the device behind your neck. And so it comes with a wall plug, the cable, and then a specific plastic part that replicates how it sits inside of your harness. So there's like no real way to put it the wrong way. The batteries can always be inserted in 2 ways. So if you have like phase A and B of the battery, you can always insert with phase B or phase A, doesn't matter. But yeah, so it really replicates the experience of sliding it inside of the harness.
And how has the blind and visually impaired community helped give feedback and helped evolve the device to what it is?
So that was a very important point and probably like the most important contribution we've had. We started as a technical team wanting to solve a challenge. I actually met a blind person who was crossing the street in Lausanne and doing a FaceTime call to a friend. And that's usually the anecdote that I tell, but it's the moment I realized that some of the stuff that were being developed in self-driving cars and autonomous driving, the kind of field that I knew of, could actually be helpful to help cross the street, identify potential obstacles, and find your way. And that was the initial drive of the project. And so we directly reached out to the ophthalmic hospital because I knew literally nothing about that field. And the ophthalmic hospital hosted a lot of test sessions for us. So we were able to have the feedback of both professional orientation and mobility trainers, and on the other hand, of a lot of end users. And we very quickly set up a small beta testing group also who owns a device and provides a lot of feedback before we ship a release to more users. And I think altogether we've reached over 250 beta testing sessions. And that's still something like that's still the main driver for now. So I think the risk for us is implementing something that no one is going to use afterwards. So we always make sure we have WhatsApp groups with users and with orientation and mobility trainers. And we just reach out to them always before starting to work on the feature and then after the feature has been developed to get feedback.
Well, that is great. I'm glad you have that quality. You know, it's really great when companies can listen to their user base and the users can have feedback into what works and what doesn't. And especially for the blind and visually impaired community, I know that some companies will develop a product and then they'll go out after it's done and then they'll test it and then they'll find that it doesn't work the way they wanted it to, or it's not actually what the community wants, which can cause some problems. So the fact that you're very open to that from the beginning and you realize that the community was part of the driving force to get this what it is very good quality. So I know I can speak for the community to say that we thank you for that quality and that respect of the user feedback and how we would want to use it.
Yeah, in January, it also marked a very interesting turn in the company because we onboarded Remy, who was our very first hire, who happened to be blind, and he came to the office with his guide dog. And that was really a moment where we felt like it was a very interesting evolution to onboard someone in the team who would become a daily user actually of the technical team, coming with no background in this field. And we never tried to hide it. The risk was always to design things because we wanted to develop it as tech people, and in the end not build something that would end up being useful for end users. And I think Remy joining was definitely a highlight and a very interesting moment for the company.
And what is your background in terms of technology? I know that you said you didn't have a lot of experience with the blindness community, but even when you started the project, I'm assuming you had to have a certain level of technology familiarity in terms of building this to know that this was out there. So how did you start off in the field?
I started by studying economics, really unrelated to what I'm doing today. And then I studied statistics and moved on to do a master's in artificial intelligence in Paris. So I moved to Paris for about 2 years and came back in Switzerland to do my PhD in applied artificial intelligence. And that's really the moment where I started to dive a lot more in computer vision. So how computers analyze the surroundings using cameras, how to do speech processing to analyze user intent from what they're saying and this kind of things. And I met my co-founder, who was also a computer scientist, was just done with his master's, and our very first hire, who was also a robotics engineer. And yeah, I think that the combination of having a bit of a generic AI kind of a background, someone who's a lot more focused on computer science, hardware, and then the last one focused on autonomous robotics, like Paul, who's working with us, was actually building autonomous wheelchairs as a research project. So how could wheelchairs with robotics arms climb stairs by themselves? And so I think this mix of background plus the team from the ophthalmic hospital all came together pretty well.
Can you speak about the development process of this device and what were some of the challenges that you faced that maybe were unexpected or that you had to really think long and hard about the best way to overcome these challenges and make the device what it is?
I think it's still an active topic. Like one thing we realized is that we can get technology to do what it's supposed to do, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be something that people are going to enjoy using. What I mean by this is our software that understands the surroundings, we quickly got it to a level where we could actually understand where obstacles were. Are they moving? Is there a risk of collision based on the trajectory, et cetera, et cetera. But then if we just set the rule of saying, if there is an obstacle that will hit you in less than 2 seconds, or if there is an obstacle that will hit you in less than 6 feet, for example, then generate a sound. And that simple rule somehow is, I think, what breaks most of the experience for an end user, because very often you need to adapt based on the surroundings. It all depends on the context. And like somehow in very crowded places, this kind of assumptions or rules are really not a good fit. And that kills the user experience by a lot. And that's really something we've noticed. And that's, I think, how ultrasound or laser sensors are built. Is like they have a very consistent way of working, but the surroundings are not consistent. And I think that's one of the most exciting aspects is kind of surroundings understanding, like the amount of things that are happening under the hood to automatically assess, is the person indoor, outdoor, is it cloudy, or is it rainy or not? Like all these kind of algorithms that are running in the backlog. Like as a user, you're never really exposed to any of that knowledge or like that processing that is happening inside, just to be able to continue to improve the experience and adapt it based on your surroundings. And I think that's still something that is evolving a lot. And that's something where we thought we had zero idea we would have to invest time in at the very beginning, because we just thought, let's do something that beeps when there is an obstacle and that's it. And it turns out like real life is a lot more complex than this, and understanding when someone is hopping on a train or getting in a bus. It's actually like if the device starts to go crazy at that moment, then you're just not going to enjoy the experience. But that's kind of the standard for any obstacle detection system. So that was definitely a big challenge. And hardware, I think there's a saying that hardware is hard. It is hard. So yeah, we kept running into troubles, especially during COVID, to get any kind of sample component whatsoever. So that was quite tricky.
Yeah, that's a great point that you make. And I think that can be one of the frustrations that some people feel with technology when it doesn't work or not working to their standards, is that it doesn't always connect to the context of how a user is using it and then what it's supposed to do to help the user. And yeah, you're exactly right. When you're looking at navigating, every situation is different. Every person's use case is going to be different. So to have those two things working together, of the technology and also the ability to have it smart enough to know the context of the user and know how to best help the user, is very key. And I think we're seeing a lot of that now with the generative AI. Is that something that has been helpful to you in this process, the newer developments in AI, or is this something that's been around for a while?
It has definitely been helpful. I mean, the whole feature of scene description using just a picture of your surroundings was something that we had in mind, but that was at the state of research when I was doing my PhD, even like 4 years ago. And so I think that's really something that has changed a lot and that really became production ready. So yeah, it's like we went from being kind of focused on local processing, so only like no internet connectivity, just everything happening inside of the device, to then using the smartphone as a potential bridge, integrate the GPS, recompute the destination or the route if you took a wrong turn, to actually just being connected to the internet to leverage generative AI algorithms. And I think that's something we didn't anticipate in the first place, but that has changed drastically since OpenAI and a couple of other players reached markets.
Well, for all the listeners out there, we hope that you're intrigued by this device and the preview of what it can do. And as we had talked about before we started recording, the Biped is really one of the things that you have to see for yourself and try it for yourself to really understand. And fortunately, for folks that are going to CSUN, there will be an opportunity to do that. Can you talk about what you're going to be doing at the CSUN conference?
So we'll have a booth. I'll be with Marco. My colleague will be running demo sessions of Biped. Yeah, very excited for that, directly in the corridors of CSUN, but also possibilities to extend a bit further some tests outdoors. So looking forward to meeting any of you if you'd like to stop by our booth.
Okay, and what's the dates of the conference?
It will be from the 18th to the 22nd of March.
Okay, very good. Well, we hope that for folks that will be out there at the CSUN conference, you can check out the Biped and take it for a little walk and see what you think of it for yourself. I know that I'll be excited at some point when I get to try out the device and look at all the wonderful things that you're doing there. Can you discuss what the future looks like for Biped? I know that there's a lot of potential with this type of device. Is there anything that you're hoping to add or any goals that you have for the future?
The goal is really to keep pushing the integrations between the various components. And one example of that is our GPS currently tells you like in 20 feet, turn left. But where there's a fantastic opportunity is that like very often the GPS is not precise enough. And so if we sync the GPS with our camera feed, our cameras can actually check, is it free to turn right now? Have I reached the edge of the building already? And can I make it left right now? And so Google worked on some of this stuff for their self-driving vehicles, and something they started to name visual positioning system instead of GPS. They worked on that VPS, and this aspect of fusion of a GPS and of the cameras to really get closer to what self-driving cars are doing is really something that I think is going to bring a big bump in perceived performance around these kind of technologies. So these are the kind of things that we're working on. And of course, all the aspects related to being able to voice control your device, kind of tell it to go to the bakery or go to the store or go to work and have it react to your voice automatically. Yeah, I think these are kind of very interesting AI applications that are ahead of us.
Yeah, the potential for the autonomy is great. As you mentioned, with the voice commands and having routes stored in there, so it can be just very easy for the user and simple for the user to do what they want to do. I think there's a lot of potential for this device to grow and expand on already what you've done. When did the device first launch, and what is the price, and where can people get it?
So we started developing the technology early 2021. We started commercialization gradually throughout 2023. CSUN will actually be one of our very first events in the US. So that's the beginning of our US operations. And in terms of price points, we currently retail in euros at about 4,250. So Don't have the exact number in dollars. But yeah, and so that's just the beginning of the market for us. So we are looking forward to getting the very first adoptions in the US for that technology.
So if someone wanted to order this right now, is that something they could do?
Yes, absolutely. So we just cleared everything and opened our website. Yeah, so that's something that is now possible. We've been working on getting this milestone ready for the US market for the past years. I'm very excited for this.
Very good. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Can you tell us the website, and can you give any contact information if folks wanted to get in touch with you?
Absolutely. The website is biped.ai. That would be BIPED.ai for artificial intelligence. And the contact email is very simple. It's hello@biped.ai.
Well, thank you, Maël, for coming on to Blind Abilities and talking about the Biped. A lot of great options of what this device can do and how people can use it to enhance their navigational workflow. And I'd like to thank you all for listening today. I encourage you to check out the website and go to CSUN and look at the Biped. And if you're feeling so inclined to purchase the device, I know you won't regret it. You got a wonderful company and a wonderful team that can help and assist in any way, I'm sure. So, Maël, thanks for taking the time to do this today.
Thanks, Simon. It was a pleasure to chat.
I had such a great time talking with Maël. I'd like to thank him for taking the time to conduct this interview with me. And I'd like to thank you for listening. If you missed any of the information shared in the audio, don't forget to take a look at the show notes. It's all there for you. Thanks for listening and have a wonderful day.
For more podcasts with the blindness perspective, check us out on the web at www.blindabilities.com, on Twitter at blindabilities, and download the free Blind Abilities app from the App Store and Google Play Store. That's 2 words, Blind Abilities. And if you want to leave some feedback, give us some suggestions, give us a call at 612-367-6093. We'd love to hear from you. I want to thank you for listening, and until next time, bye-bye.
When we share
what we see through each other's eyes, we can then begin to bridge the gap
between the limited expectations and the reality
of blind abilities.
And the realities of blind abilities.